everybody. Happy Sunday and welcome to another episode of the Pit Stop Pals. First time we've done an episode when we're not coming off a race, but we got two races coming up, including a trip to Canada here in just a couple of weeks' time. So that is exciting. Nielson and Gage back with you. Lots to talk about, though, with Red Bull and Mercedes. Gager, there's like 2 or 3 days this week where there was something where we could have just hopped on and done 5-10 minutes on at that point, but we're like, you know what, we'll save it till Sunday. I love the fact that we got a bunch of news this week from Formula One.
It's hilarious because I would see something and I would text you or vice versa. You'd get a text and we'd go, oh gosh, okay, let's just wait till Sunday. We got this thing going for Sunday. And of course, more things happened. I mean, This morning, I really could have used an F1 race. I won't lie to you, Dusty. That would have been great just to mellow me out for the day. I needed it. But with two back-to-back coming up, this is another race week. I'm looking forward to this for sure. Especially with the amount of stuff that popped up.
Now that you mentioned it, I think this morning I was dreaming about an F1 race. Not at night, but like the kids kind of woke up briefly at 7 and my wife went and talked him into laying around a little bit more. So then I fell back to sleep and I'm pretty sure I dreamt that I got up, was getting tea ready to sit down and watch an F1 race. So yeah, it probably would have helped as well. But we got back-to-backs coming up, which is exciting. So we'll have a lot of stuff coming up here at the Pit Stop Pals. If you are listening to the podcast, you can watch it live on YouTube as well. May also start streaming it on Twitter here in the near future. But let's start with Red Bull, Gage. A few things with Mr. Verstappen, not very happy this week. But Checo, not only does he get the win, but he gets a 2-year deal. We were talking about what's going to happen with that second car at Red Bull. And, I think an interesting commitment both from the team and then obviously from Perez to sit around and ride shotgun with Verstappen for a few more years.
Well, it was really funny when they were going into the headquarters afterwards and they caught it on tape where I guess Checo had signed before, right? So, and he turned to Christian Horner and said, maybe I signed a little too early after winning the race, right? So I thought that was great. We talked about it too, Dusty, a little bit just about Monaco. And is it going to stay in the circuit of F1? Because I don't think it's conducive to these cars. It once more relies on qualifying than anything else. It is so hard to pass. Although I felt it was an exciting race just because of the circumstances with the weather and things like that. But great for Checo. Great strategy by Red Bull again. I think we'll talk about that a little bit into this. But Checo's now, you look at the standings right now, and he's right there. And the big news of the week was Big Daddy Voss being completely unhappy with the Red Bull strategy. And man, you just can't get away from parents trying to get into their kids' stuff, even at the highest level of the world. This is kind of the first thing I thought about was Big Daddy Lindros in the hockey world back then, and so man, if I'm Max, I'm just like, Dad, come on, you got it. This is ridiculous. And
do you think so though, or do you think Max? Because Max is kind of the same way as this guy. Do you think he does that without talking to Max at all? Or do you think he tells Max, he goes, I'm pissed off, I'm going to say something about this?
Yeah, there could be. Looking at Max on the podium, he wasn't happy, right?
No.
And I just kind of brushed it off as, okay, I didn't win and he couldn't do anything and he wanted to get back up there and he didn't like how everything played out. But then probably a little talking with his dad and that evening or something and to see what he said, because although Voss was talking about the strategy was wrong, what's Checo supposed to do in that situation?
I was gonna ask you. I mean, unless the strategy is get out of the way so Max can move up. I mean, what did they do that was anti-Max and pro-Checo in that situation? He qualified better, and he was in front of him the entire race. What are you supposed to do?
Pit him for they stacked the when they did pit, they stacked them, right? But Checo was first at that point. I don't know. It's he says there was 10 points squandered for Red Bull and that for Max in such a close battle here. And like we said, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I'm looking really forward to qualifying this weekend to see if Checo can get ahead of Max on the starting grid and see what happens from there. Because this is we might actually see an inter-squabbling Red Bull kind of thing if Checo can keep up in the point standings.
Do you It comes back to what we said on the last episode. Verstappen's dad was probably mad that Checo went into the wall and made sure that he started ahead of Max. And he's
Well,
just, anyway, the strategy was Checo into the wall now. You'll get to start ahead. Like, that's, it had to be a thing. Like, the way we looked at it. Come on now.
it was there was like a minute and a half left in Q3, about to go out, and Checo's ahead of everyone, and just kind of boop, just little back end into the wall, finishes ahead of Max qualifying, has the two Ferraris ahead of them, and just because of the week before, I don't know, man, these guys are too good with those vehicles to have something like that happen, I think, and it worked out well for Checo, new contract and a win. That's awesome.
Absolutely perfect weekend for Checo. He couldn't have cashed in any better. Now, I was trying to find the details on his contract. I see, like, I've got all these salaries up in front of me from Sport Track, and they've got his salary this year. Red Bull is at $25 million for Verstappen and $8 million for Perez, who's 32 years old. Gager, you think that's one of those deals where, and we apologize, I looked around for the new numbers on the new deal today. I couldn't find them. I don't know where the Draggers and the Schefters of Formula One are, but we need these numbers. But he signs for 2 more years. So he's got this year, 23 and 24. Do you think that's one of those deals where it's like $8 million each a year for 2 more years? Or does he actually get a little bit of a bump for the next couple of years, like to 10 or 12 mil?
I would say 10 or 12, just to, because of the team aspect. Like, if you look back to the last race of last year and him defending against Hamilton, like, Checo's he's a beast defender. And I think that's what they were kind of looking at, a kind of a blocker for Max, I guess. And he's fallen into just the Red Bull thinking of, and he seemed completely fine with Max being number 1 and him being number 2. But saying that now, I think, just from over the last few races, it seems like he's getting that car a better understanding of it, and it's suiting his driving style. That's what Voss was talking about. There's no he wants more front end downforce, I think,
in
for
Max's
Max.
car.
He was saying he was complaining about how the car is set up. It's not conducive to Max's driving style, right? So, and that might.
But up until this last race, Max had won every race he was in. That he finished, right? Like,
I have such
a hard time listening to that guy. Yeah,
it's great. So
some comparables for Checo. I mean, he was at $8 million for this year. Let's say his new deal is $10 million per year or whatever. If you look at some of the other drivers out there, Danny Ricciardo's at $15 million. McLaren obviously wanting to maybe get out of that deal. Carlos Sainz is at $10 million this year. Charles Leclerc's at $12 million. Lance Stroll somehow is making $10 million to do nothing. Vettel's at $15 million. Fernando Alonso's at $20 million. And this one might be the best comparison. Like, if I'm Checo, Valtteri Bottas is making $10 million a year. Like, to me, at minimum, you're getting the $10 million that Bottas is getting.
Yeah, and I would say they're kind of similar drivers, right? Like, they're
if Bottas was in that Red Bull car, he'd probably have very similar results.
I think it would be a wash with those two, right? And Bottas is, I mean, that Alfa Romeo, he's done awesome with that. A little bit unlucky over the last, but he's finished in the points. I'd look to him to be up there by the end of the year if they get things ironed out. But yeah, that's a pretty good comparison. I'd say he gets a bump for sure, just because of his performance. And this year, you could argue that Checo's been probably one of the best drivers of the whole season. Without the failures of the car earlier on, he'd be right up there too.
Yeah. That's true. All right, before we move on to Mercedes, let's just continue with this contract discussion, because these are from the-race.com, and this is contract terms for these guys moving forward. Lewis Hamilton, George Russell under contract until the end of 2023. Verstappen's locked up to the end of 2028. Checo now up to 24. Leclerc and Sainz are both signed through 2024. McLaren has Lando Norris locked in there, and I think it was $12 million for him this year. He's signed to the end of 2025. Danny Ricciardo signed to the end of next year, but they've said that they might want to try to get out of that. Fernando Alonso signed at $20 million a year until the end of this year. Esteban Ocon until 2024. Both guys in the AlphaTauri cars, Gasly and Tsunoda, done at the end of this year. Vettel and Stroll done at the end of this year. Latifi Latifi and Albon done at the end of this year. Bottas is around till 2024. Zeus 2022. Magnussen that deal to the end of 2023, and then Schumacher 2022. Gager, of all those guys that we just listed, is there one guy that you think worthy of discussing right now?
Like I think it's Pierre Gasly is the biggest one, and just what has happened over last week. I think I'm just making a prediction here. I think we're going to see Pierre Gasly in papaya orange sometime soon. Here. Just
really?
The fact that Zach Brown comes out and says we are not happy with Danny Ricciardo, and we've been talking about Danny Ricciardo since we started watching Drive to Survive.
I know,
Dusty, and just he's never been able to get the pace and get a couple extra tenths on the car, whichever car he's been driving in. It seems always the same. Yeah, he pulls out a win here or there, but the inconsistency of Daniel Ricciardo, and you said 15 million a year, that's a tough pill to swallow. So with Checo signing a few extra years now with Red Bull, Gasly was, from all accounts, I think he was waiting for that seat again and another chance to be in the big car with Red Bull. But now, and his contract coming up, I think he will be one of the most sought after drivers, just because seeing what he's done in that AlphaTauri car. Of course, it'll depend on what's going on to the end of the year. But I'm going to make a prediction that we see him in a papaya.
That's the first thing I thought of too. And we were talking before we went on. And I said, "Man, do you think you could see McLaren take that second seat with Lando Norris at did I say McLaren? Gasly at McLaren." Yeah. I just Googled while you were talking Gasly to McLaren just to see what's out there. And if you go to planetf1.com, they've laid out 4 options for Pierre Gasly. 1, stay at AlphaTauri. Obviously, that would be an option. Number 2, McLaren's Danny Ricciardo replacement. And if they can get out of that contract this year, Gasly's contract ends this year, so maybe by next year we could see that happening. And somebody says, take a shot on Aston Martin and the fact that they continue to say that they're going to continue to take steps in the right direction. They've got some good training facilities that have been set up now. I don't know if I'd be too excited to do that. And then the other one's an interesting one, which I'm very surprised to even see. I never even thought it was an option. But Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes, when Lewis Hamilton is done, his contract's up at the end of next year. I don't know if there's another one there. I mean, if he bounces back this year, next year, I'm sure they'd like to keep him around for a little bit more. But I think out of all of those, I think if you're Pierre Gasly, if you're looking at all those options, I think immediately sliding into the McLaren car next year would probably be at the top of the list.
Just the fact what Lando is doing with McLaren this year, and they've talked about the younger drivers with these new cars, and some of the older guys, the more experienced drivers, are having a bit more tough time getting used to it. And how did they mention it? The elasticity of the brain of these younger drivers and being able to possibly get used to a new car a little bit quicker and not have those ingrained kind of driving styles in them for over such a long period of time. They're just able to adapt a little bit better. So I don't know, like you see Ricciardo, he's 32 years old, Gasly's a younger guy. I would just seeing him and Norris, 2 young guys in those cars. I would if I'm Zach Brown, I'm definitely looking at, and granted, I'm not a team principal or anything, but I'm licking my chops a little bit to see yet to see what I can do with obviously Ricciardo's contract and what Pierre Gasly wants to do, because he's going to have a seat in an F1 car next year.
If you get out of Ricciardo's contract for next year, and we just laid out everybody that would be available, I think Pierre Gasly's target number 1. I mean, I don't even think it's a discussion. So very interesting to see. And I hope it happens so we can look back and be like, remember episode 9 of the Pit Stop Pals where we were like, yeah, Gasly to McLaren. It just makes sense. So that's great. All right, let's slide over to Mercedes, where one of the stories I texted you about this week was a lot of people saying that Lewis Hamilton is no longer the big dog at Mercedes, and it's now George Russell that they kind of view as being in the number 1 seat. Gager, do you think this early into Russell's first season, coming off of everything that Lewis Hamilton has accomplished, they've already kind of turned that page on this team?
Yes, I do think so, Dusty. Because it doesn't seem like they're they're helping Lewis much at all from what Lewis is saying. And you see the performance that Russell's pulling out of this car, and it's getting better and better and better. What happens when they get this car to where they want to be? Like, and is Lewis going to be able to get up to Russell and do? I just think, just hearing how Lewis is talking, it and hearing him, and we should save the engine. And of course, he did have a good race and moved back up into the pack, but it just, I don't know. I just get a feeling that there's not a lot of fire in Lewis to get back up there. It's real poopy pants most of the time when you hear him on his radio and stuff. He says some of the things after, but it's a very disappointed Lewis Hamilton this year. And Russell is, I mean, a lot of people have, when they've talked about him, they don't really like the way he talks, but he's a confident young driver and thinks he can do a lot better, right? And there's no stopping this guy. I think he's done great with that car. It's unbelievable we've talked about it. Maybe he's just he drove such a piece of crap for so long, he gets into something that's actually way better than what it was. He's like, this is great. I'll drive.
Yeah, even though it's not as good as maybe what Mercedes had in the past, he's still like, oh my God, this is a huge upgrade, right? So, well, 100% it is. It's not even close.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a Red Bull or a Ferrari this year, it's a lot different for him, for sure. I don't know if I'll be able to say I completely buy into it until we get into a spot where Lewis Hamilton's in second and Russell's in third, and they're like, hey, Lewis, we're going to need you just to let George slide by. His pace is a little bit better. Because I do not see Lewis Hamilton saying, yep, no problem, guys, I'll slide on over. Like, there's if they get in that position, man, that's a nightmare to have to handle.
Lewis, he better start qualifying ahead of Russell and holding that position so he doesn't have to get into that by the end of the year, constructor points, or even getting up into the top 3 of the driver standings or getting closer or whatever. And they're asking Lewis to step aside. He was already lapped by Verstappen once this year. Having his younger teammate move ahead of him, that would be the ultimate.
that would sting a little bit. Gage, anything else on the board today? What else did you want to talk about? I thought there was one other thing.
We talked about it before, but just the whole strategizing of the races. And I think I mentioned how Red Bull has just been hitting it bang on every single time. And I think this is one of the reasons why Lewis Hamilton is struggling a little bit, is his inability to adapt and take chances during the race too. There's chatter on the radio and he's saying, no, I don't want to do that. But I look at Carlos last weekend and they saying, okay, let's go to the intermediates, I think. And Carlos told them, he goes, nope, we're staying out for a few more laps and I'm going to slicks. Like, he made that decision, a huge gamble, because I believe the rain fronts were coming in too. So they weren't sure of what the track was going to look like, but I love the fact that he took that chance. And I mean, Ferrari did mess up with Leclerc, not leaving him out and saying, yeah, come in, don't come in. That type of communication can't happen. It cost Carlos or Charles first place for sure.
It cost him the race.
Yeah. And I see it from Russell a little bit too. He takes chances when he's out there. And just Red Bull's just knocking it out of park with their strategy. So this weekend, I'd like to see the strategies of different teams. There's tire selections, and I mean, even down to the tires going to the mediums for Red Bull kind of worked out as well, right? So all those things point in the direction. But I like the fact that Carlos is taking a little bit more risk with things. Makes for a much more exciting race.
All right, so what do we got coming up? We got Azerbaijan and then Canada in the next 2 weeks. So that should be, I haven't really looked too much into this race. I'm kind of getting excited for the Canadian race. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to, we'll be breaking it down each of the next couple of weekends. Of course, 2 weeks from now, we'll be live in Montreal, PITSTOP PALS right there on the paddock.
In the paddock club.
That would be
us and Button just sitting there. That'd be great. Yeah, just off to the side.
That would be amazing. Oh God, too good. All right, well, that's episode 9 of the PITSTOP Pals, and we take a look into some of the contract situations, Red Bull, Mercedes as well. If you've not yet subscribed to the podcast and you're watching the stream or you're watching some clips a little bit later on, just search the PITSTOP Pals on all of your podcasting platforms. And if you do subscribe and download the podcast, give us a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcast. We would appreciate it. Gager, you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, buddy.
You bet. Later.